All right, let's wrap the audit evidence section up. Okay, so as usual, like I said, I'll try and split it into two when I see the time is running. I want to take my time and do the presentation, the lecture. That's why. Every organization has controls, internal control systems, accounting systems that support the preparation of the financial statements. Okay, so if there are no control systems that will guide us, accounting system that will guide us to prepare and present the records, how would we prepare it? Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that before I go in to vouch the payroll figures, I need to look at the systems that support the payroll. Okay, I need to look at the wages and salaries systems, the controls. Does the wages and salaries just appear as administrative expenses? Or there's something that happens, somebody will approve a timesheet, or somebody will approve a payroll adjustment in terms of salary increases before it gets to the final user, or before it appears on the books. Okay, so it is always important that before we gather or we test the transactions, we must always test the control systems. That's the supporting underlying premises upon which we prepare the financial statements. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on and see the test of controls. Now, before I proceed on this particular note, I want to skip and go back to the main learning objectives. Okay, so we dealt up to this particular point. Very sure about that. The sources of evidence. Okay, yes, up to this extent as well. Now, advantages of using this, I will touch on it in a general atmosphere, in a general sense, okay? And then we'll just wrap it up. So I'm now bringing in some testing here, okay? Some testing here in this particular slide, so that when we go to the next section, the whole of Unit 4 is about audit evidence, okay? So audit evidence cuts across, it's in 4 sections. So we're running it all together as a block presentation. I love the way they have organized it in the book, okay? If you take a particular chapter on audit evidence and using the work of an expert, they will give you how to test these evidences, okay? Inspection, reconfirmation, calculation, but we will treat it in the next section. It's not a jamming up. We just want to give you a premises in a logical flow, okay? Before we go and test the assertions, what is the premises that will give us those assertions for which we are testing, okay? So let me put it on the full scale mode whilst I skip to the test of controls. Yeah, so what are test of controls? Simply, we're talking of test of internal control systems, okay? Or accounting systems, okay? So these are more of control procedures. They are not detailed testing of the transactions or balances, okay? So we want to look at evidence that the control procedures that leads to the final figures reported on the face of the books is satisfactory. It operates well. The system is strong enough and we can rely upon it, okay? Formerly, we used to call it compliance testing, but now we call it test of controls. Now, test of controls, examples could be like authorization procedures, like I said, payroll, for example. Is there someone who authorizes the payroll adjustment and increases and new person is on board, let's keep him in the system, okay? It could also be like maintenance of control accounts, okay? Control account for debtors, creditors, who maintains it, who reconciles them, okay? Who reconciles the debtors control account or ensures that the confirmations received from the banks could be used to prepare a bank reconciliation statement. It could also be checking arithmetical accuracy, cast checking. Okay, it's also a type of control testing, because of course in the workplace you see somebody will add and then another person will tally before somebody will input into the system. Okay, we could also be comparing the stock count with accounting records or cash counts with accounting records. Do they jive? Okay, do they jive? They're also looking at restricted assets to restricted access to assets and records, who has access to go into the payroll system and make changes. You can observe. You can ask them to walk you through, and then you see it, okay? This is the heart, once again, this is the heart of audit. To me, I think this is the heart of audit, the evidence, the unit 4 of this particular model, gathering evidence, vouching for it, okay? Now, what we will need to know is that if we conduct tests of these controls and realize there are errors, we cannot rely on it, unless that error is just an exception rather than the rule, okay? Now, where exceptions are found to be extremely high, how can it happen that this is just a one-off, this is an exception, but it is quite significant? If it is significant, again, I cannot rely on it. I cannot rely on it. Though it is a one-off, but that one-off exception, considered as a proportion to the overall, looks quite significant. You cannot rely on it, okay? So we need to always reassess the situation and check why did it occur, one-off, okay? Why did it occur, but it is quite significant. Now, to the extent that we can rely on the controls that we have tested, will determine the extent to which we'll conduct what we call the substantive testing. Two main tests occur in audit: control testing and substantive testing. If the control testing shows that the systems of control accounting systems are good, we can rely on them. Procedures are robust. They ensure efficient reporting, and the errors, any errors, will be minimal or insignificant. Then the substantive testing will be very small. Substantive testing, what is it? It is the detailed testing of the transaction balances and account numbers. Okay, so it could be analytical review. So horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, ratio analysis, forecasting, projection, analytical reviews, okay? The purpose of a substantive test is to provide evidence to support the relevant assertions made by management in the financial statements, especially the balance sheet items, the statement of balance, statement of financial position, okay? So like I said, if internal controls are strong, we will confine substantive testing to only balance sheet items. Income statement will not do it. Or even if we do just a few, okay? So substantive testing is the detailed one. If the control system is seen to be weak, then we are going to do a comprehensive substantive testing, detailed testing of the account balances. There is something we call directional testing, like the name sounds. So it could be tracing it from the transaction level to the final account. So you pick sales, how it was initiated, okay? So the accounts department wants to purchase furniture, okay? Who authorized it? Okay, who initiated the order? Head of department. Who ordered it? Dean of the section, okay? Before we went on to get a customer order, okay? And then we'll continue to look at when the order was made, the delivery note will be taken. We'll compare the delivery note to the sales invoice or the payment order, okay? What we call the three-way match. Compare the order to the payment and then to the delivery notes, okay? From there, we then move on to the day book, okay? I'm dealing with we buying, so purchases day book, for example, and then moving on to the purchases ledger, okay? So we need to show all of this, okay? We need to show all of this. So it could be from the transaction level until when it ended in the books, okay? So and again, and it could also be the other way around. We pick it at the account balance level and trace it down to the very starting point, the customer order level, okay? Not only does the directional testing deals with tracing from one end to the other, it also deals with vouching the items. Check the transactions to the original documentations to see whether it is valid, whether it is correctly recorded in the system. So this is one end where we are picking from the financial statement to the source documentation. So the assertions we are checking at the financial statement is that, does it exist? Did it occur? Okay. So we trace it from the financial statement to the ledger, to the journal, to the source documentation. In that case, at the source documentation, we'll vouch, we'll test whether we've overstated or it was understated, okay? Usually under purchasing and sales, it could be overstated, okay? Now, the other aspect is where we are tracing from the source documentation to what? The final financial statement to check whether everything which needs to be recorded has been recorded right from the source documentation, capturing it in the journal posting to the general ledger, and then to the final financial statement, which we now present for auditors to audit. Okay, all right. We also have what we call rotational testing. Today, this year, we'll look at payroll. Next year, we'll just deal with sales. The other year, we'll deal with purchases. So it has two dimensions. Rotation of audit emphasis, so performing in-depth testing of different aspects of the business from 1 year to the other. Okay, from 1 year to the other. Then we have visit rotation, and that's what we did. I remember with KPMG auditing. Today, we'll go and look at this branch on the Spintex Road. The next time, we'll go to the other branch in the Central Market Station. Okay, so where the auditor will visit some branches for their work, okay, or business locations. The next year, they pick another region or another county to go and look to do that. Sometimes we need experts to help us, okay? For example, we will need engineers who validate or who vouch a particular transaction because we don't have that technical know-how, like oil reserves. We want to go and observe oil reserves in the refinery, okay? We may just see that this is oil, but for all you know, this is not real oil. This is just some water with some black substance or oily substance poured on it. So we may need these experts, advice of experts. Sometimes we contract them, okay, who will help us maybe in the valuation of inventory, okay, and determine the outcome of any technical or legal issues. But listen, before we accept the advice of these experts, we need to look at the source of these guys. Do they have any connection with the client? Do they have the technical know-how and experience to conduct this? If they are connected somehow to the client, we may not be able to rely on the advice that they give to us. If their qualifications and experiences are questionable, we may not be able to rely on their information. So we need to always vouch for this, okay? Ask yourself, what are the advantages of relying on experts? What are the disadvantages, okay? After this, you should be able to tell. Now, relying on these experts, we should always get it in the form of a written information, not just oral presentation, okay? Now, experts must also confirm that they comply with the FRC ethical code or any similar code that governs their work. So if it is an engineer we are picking, engineers should have an ethical code of conduct for sure. If it's a legal person we need, they should have an ethical code that they must comply with. And we must always get these codes to verify that really these codes make some good sense for us to go by. Key points we want to note: you must understand that this expert who is advising you, okay, you must understand what the expert is giving you, the advice is giving you. And the onus lies on us as auditors, okay, to use our judgments to ascertain the accuracy and reliability of the advice he's giving us. Now, remember, we are free to reject their opinion if we think it is not going to help us. Because at the end of the day, it's you, the auditor, who needs them, okay? So you must make sure that you take all reasonable steps to ensure that any expert advice you are getting can aid your work, okay? Always, it is on you. You cannot blame that. You cannot shift the blame onto the experts that they gave you false information and that's what you use. No, you should have done your due diligence, okay? There's something we call working papers. ISA 230 talks of documentation of our audit work, okay? KPMG will always tell you if it's not documented, it is not done. We had one clever guy at our workplace. I will not mention his name for sure. And this guy was so clever. He can go to the field, do all the work, and keep the whole thing in his head. And if it gets to the time when they need the reports, he can reproduce all the working papers from his head. He was such a genius. Okay, but it's not the best. Okay, it's not the best. You must always document. So audit documentation is what we prepare to support our conclusions that we've drawn, okay? It tells us the sufficient appropriate evidence we've gathered, okay? It is our scrap paper. Like the name sounds, working paper. It's a scrap paper, but not really. We design it in a very nice way, but that forms the basis of our work. In case anything happens, we can prove that this is the work we did. Okay, this is the rough work we did. It helps us to demonstrate that the audit was performed in line with our ICES, okay, and any applicable regulatory or legal regimes that is governing the work which we are doing. All audit work to be done needs to be detailed in the audit program. Every audit firm have their audit program. Every audit firm. Of course, the managers will always have to vouch. They will review the audit program to see whether it is relevant to the area you are working on. Okay, it's always been updated. It's always updated. Okay, so we must, the audit manager or the audit partner, whoever is in charge, must review the audit program to make sure that the audit program will help us achieve the objectives that we are setting. Okay, any working paper must be initiated by the person who worked on it. Then you always see a place for reviewer, who is normally your manager or your senior person on the audit team. If it's a team of auditors, then we have audit trainees or associates. Normally the audit in charge will initiate that he has reviewed it. Of course, it's not a final paper. So when there are corrections, they can ask you to go and verify this and rework it. So KPMG, I remember we used to use paper, hard paper, to do the working papers. But over time, when we had idea, everything was done electronically. I'm sure today they still do it electronically, KPMG Ghana. Now, the audit working papers will, at least at a minimum, of course, it will have the name of the client on it. Okay, the date will be specified, the audit area you are working on. Okay, the objective, the purpose of the test will be stated. The conclusion, did you achieve the objectives? It will also have to be stated at the end of the paper. If there are points you want to flag out and bring it to the attention of the audit manager or the management, you still state it on the working paper, okay? On the working paper, again, you must tell us the test you carried out. Any legends you placed in there, you must indicate. Legend, I'm sure you understand. I'm talking of key notes, okay, key. Maybe you put A there. A means bank reconciliations were prepared on monthly basis. C means it was reviewed by a senior official other than the one who prepared. Okay, E means there's adequate segregation of duties, something like that. So you must indicate the test you actually carried out. Listen, working papers are used for both control testing and then substantive testing. So not just for substantive, for all of them. Okay. And we must file them on what we call the current file. We have two types of files, the permanent file and the current file. Listen, you've heard the current file here. We will meet it again. And when I'm explaining what current file means, you will say, oh, I heard it here. Okay, so we end it here. We'll end it here. There are some 3 case studies, very beautiful case studies. Okay, you would want to try them. Okay, page 175 to 176 of the core text 12th edition. Again, always try your students self-testing. Quick questions. What is this? What is professional skepticism? In 2 to 3 sentences, you just refresh your mind. Like I said, audit evidence is the heart of audit. To me, that's me. I may be wrong. And given the priority placed on this, I will advise you that you attempt and address this examination question. I think it's only one question on Donkey 8. Donkey 8. Quite a good question, page 176 to 177. Okay, all right. We'll leave it here, friends. We'll leave it here. Okay, so 20 minutes, that's good. All right, so audit evidence, we'll continue with audit evidence. We'll look at how to conduct these evidences, how to derive these evidences, what means can we use to gather the information. Okay, and then we will proceed from there. All right, friends. I'll see you when I see you. Bye for now.